Hello. So today I will talk about the assessment process in education and some important factors involving assessment and the special education process. So the assessment process in education involves 4 phases. In the first phase, identification and referral, students are identified and referred for special education services. So when students are displaying some sort of difficulty either with behavior or academics, the teacher tries some classroom interventions that may be helpful. And if these interventions don't work for a student, then the teacher can refer the student to what is often called a student intervention uh, team or SIT team for assessment of the student, for formal assessment of the student. Uh, then this formal assessment occurs in the second phase, determination of eligibility. So a team of professionals, including the classroom teacher and others such as a school psychologist or other expert in psychometrics, formally assess the student for their strengths and needs to determine whether the student is eligible for special education services. The requirements for eligibility are outlined by IDEA, and these requirements are basically that the student requires special education services because of a list of 13 uh, different disabilities, including autism, learning disabilities, um, health impairments, etc. And if the student is deemed eligible for special education services, then program planning begins, which is the third stage. This is the stage in which the team writes the Individualized Education Program, or IEP. So IEP refers to both the program and the written document that talks about the program that professionals must follow for this student. And then the last stage, program implementation of IEP, occurs after an initial IEP meeting in which the team meets to outline what type of services a student will receive, and this involves the parents as well. So during assessment for of eligibility for special education services, professionals such as school psychologists use psychometrics to score formal assessments that they may conduct. Of course, they will also use informal measures such as observations and questionnaires and interviews, but um, often they use formal assessments uh, to help with the assessment process. So some of the norm referenced uh, scores that they might use are standard scores, percentile scores, and stay nines. So standard scores converts raw scores into a common scale, usually with a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. Percentile scores tell us the percentage of scores at or below an individual score. So if somebody scores at an 80th percentile, that means that this person scored the same as or higher than 80% of other people who took that test. And stay nines are short for standard 9. So they have a standard deviation of 2, mean of 5, and a standard scale of 1 through 9. So when the IEP is written, um, the student is placed in the least restrictive environment, or LRE. This is an IDEA law requirement, and um, this happens when students with disabilities are placed in the school environment that places the least restrictions on those students. So in other words, students are placed in regular education as much as possible with appropriate supports. So full-time placement in special education or residential placement is used only as a last resort. So the goal here is to have students um, spend as much time as possible in regular education so as to not hurt their social and emotional development. Um, and so that their peers can appreciate the differences in their peers. So we want students to be successful in regular education as much as possible. In fact, most students who receive special education services um, spend much of their time in regular education. So it's important for educators to understand that there's a very high possibility that they will have at least a few students who are receiving some kind of special education services in their classroom. So it's very beneficial um, for educators to know how to differentiate their instruction um, to uh, to accommodate these students who have uh, special needs. So how do we involve the family? Um, how do we encourage families to be involved in their students' uh, school life? So frequent positive communication with families is very important. So we need to tell families not just about the bad days with students, but also about the good days. So families will definitely appreciate a call or note home saying uh, that their child had a good day at school and what happened for it to be a good day. And students will feel good uh, about themselves because the teacher is sort of uh, bragging on them, and this can increase the possibility that the student will repeat the behaviors that led to this positive note home. So it's also important to create opportunities for building rapport with the families. So um, it might be a good idea to have office hours either before or after school so that uh, uh, families can pop in for a quick update if they want, and also make our personal contact information readily available, such as maybe work email or personal cell phone number if necessary. Um, and also, it's very important to treat families as partners in education. So, for example, we need to always seek family input and suggestions for students so they can be successful. Because when we treat families as partners in education, they will feel appreciated and want to do more uh, for their child in school. So we need to assume that the families want to be involved and they want the best for the child just like we do. Um, Another way to increase family involvement is designing activities that families can attend, such as project presentations. Um, Families do enjoy seeing what their children do in school, especially when it's a sort of in an exhibition type of setting. So if students are working on, for example, a science project, the school can hold a science fair so that students can display their experiments and families can see the different experiments. It's also important to be flexible and sensitive to the needs of each family, uh, and uh, and respect their level of involvement. Some families will want to be more involved than others simply because of culture or socioeconomic status. So we need to just follow their lead with the type of involvement that the family wants. But we also need to assume that most families will want some at least minimal involvement with 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 what's going on with their student at school, even if it's just how they're behaving or if they can do anything else to help the student's grades. But most families will want at least a a moderate amount of involvement. They'll want to know about different activities going on at school or who their child's friends are at school, etc. So that's the basics of the assessment process and what happens after. Thank you.